You're watching the Fantasy Rankings Report only on Fantasy Now Plus. Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Rankings Report. My name is Topher Kurt, but you can call me Topher. And I am here with my co-host tonight, John Romaker. How are you today, buddy?
I'm great, Topher. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here on the show. Either my astigmatism is kicking in or my camera was a little fuzzy because I feel like I've got like an 80s fuzzy vibe. So either way, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yes. On this show, we compare running back and wide receiver rankings from 6 different fantasy football sources. I am the wide receiver expert. Michael Flores, my typical co-host, is the running backs expert, but he is gone today. So Michael is helping us out with that. Okay. I want to start off by mentioning that the show is brought to you by Fantasy Now Plus and the Fins Talk Sports Network, and you should subscribe to both channels. The links are in our description below. Also, we're partnered with Underdog Fantasy. If you pay $5 and you play that $5, you can get $100 in bonus funds by using the promo code FN Plus, F as in the word plus, FNPLUS. It's really cool that we get to partner with a group like that. So make sure you take advantage of it. I'm going to start us off with our rankings question of the day, which in this segment, the hosts will ask each other questions about rankings in any way, shape, or form. We can stick to our area of expertise or talk about a different position. Something that I like to do in the latter half of the season when I'm looking at my rankings is explore the last 4 weeks of what that player has done. Because this is a time of year where you saw Brian Thomas Jr. last year take a huge leap. You're seeing this year Michael Wilson taking a huge leap. So looking at full year-long statistics versus the last 4 weeks can help provide us some indicators. So I am going to go through the big 4 positions in fantasy football right here. And I am going to give you some names. And I want you to tell me if you think they are in the top 5 for fantasy points per game over the last 4 weeks. So that includes that I do fantasy points per game because there are bye weeks included in this. So at the quarterback position, Jackson Dart. Do you think he's in the top 5 for fantasy points per game over the past 4 weeks?
Excuse me. I don't think he's in the top 5 because he's just now coming off of that concussion. So I'm sure that's setting him back a little bit. But I do think he was on a roll to potentially get up to that point before the concussion and everything that came about.
Yeah, he actually is the number 1 quarterback in fantasy points per game over the past 4 weeks.
Okay.
So just because he's played that one game and then or 2 games and he's been out the rest of that time. What about Jacoby Brissett?
Now, there is one that I would say is in the top 4 just because of what he's done and what he's showed Michael Wilson being possible of, even with Marvin Harrison being out with his appendix surgery.
Yeah.
So I would say he would have actually been higher than Jackson Dart on a whole because of what he's done in the last, I believe, 3 weeks at least.
Yeah.
And potentially they should just keep him in and rest Kyler for the rest of the season.
I think it'll end up being that way. But Jacoby Brissett is number 7 in fantasy points per game right now. However, even though that is the case, he does have the most passing yards over the past 4 weeks with 1,288 yards. He has over 100 more than the next, actually 139 more than the next highest, which would be Josh Allen. I'm going to give you one more in our quarterback position. Let's talk about Drake May. Do you think Drake May is in our top 5 fantasy points per game over the past 4 weeks?
I think he's on a roll. And I haven't looked at his stats. I actually have him in 2 different leagues. But wise, I don't believe he is in that upper echelon leading just in fantasy points overall. I think he's just been a serviceable quarterback so far this season.
I agree. He's actually quarterback 12 over the past 4 weeks. Here's your top 5. Jackson Dart 1, Josh Allen 2, Caleb Williams 3, Dak Prescott 4, Matthew Stafford 5 in your fantasy points per game over the past 4 weeks. And this is a list that if you would show somebody back in August would cause an aneurysm in multiple fantasy football players. Let's go to our running back position. I'm going to ask you about 3 guys, fantasy points per game. Let's talk about Rico Dowdle. Do you think Rico Dowdle's been top 5 at the running back?
Yes, I do. And this week was his first hitch in his get-up. But I don't think it was his fault. I think it was more of Canales and them not playing him. I mean, he was averaging 6 yards per carry Monday night, but then they barely even used him, and he wasn't able to actually accrue any of the points.
Correct. Rico Dowdle is number 9, the number 9 ranked running back over that time.
I was a little off again.
No, yeah, you were a little off, but kind of close. What about Tyrone Tracy, who's been turning it on lately?
I don't know his stats. Once again, I only have him in one of my leagues. I have started him the last 2 weeks, and I know I didn't see what he scored this past week. But I wouldn't put him up in the top 4.
Yeah, he's definitely not. He's 22 in the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, I didn't see what he actually scored. So
yeah,
he's not one of those that you think about.
Correct. But he's made some waves, so that's why I bring it up. Now, looking at one more, Travion Henderson.
Well, we're going to talk about him here in a little bit,
Okay.
And I do have some stats on him. But yes, I will say he is in the top 4. And if New England uses him right, he'll stay in the top.
Yeah,
the rest of the season out.
Yeah. So right now, Travion Henderson is number 5 in fantasy points per game over the past 4 weeks in half-point PPR. The rankings are Jahmyr Gibbs at 1, Christian McCaffrey 2, Devon Achane 3, Jonathan Taylor 4, Travion Henderson 5, and Jamie Perogue, one of our constant listeners, watchers, always love it. Hey guys, glad to see you here. And Sergio asking us a question once again. Thanks for asking help. Question on flex. You got a lot of different pieces here. Swift, Warren, Shakir, Irving, Samuel, or Rodriguez. Pick one. That is a lot of different options. Can you please let us know if this is a half point, full point, standard league? Because that will help in making that decision possible. Okay, let's go.
I would also wonder. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you go. You go.
With that list of many players and only wanting one flex, who are you starting in your running back slot?
Yes,
because you got Bucky coming back. You got Warren coming up. He isn't expected to be out, but he's coming back and him fighting with Gainwell. But I'm wondering who else you got that you're playing. Those are your options or your flex option.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good question. It's a standard scoring league. And my rankings question of the day is taking a little long, so I will go on from that. We did get some good stuff about who's in the top 5 over the past few weeks. I do want to show everybody the document that we use to get all this information. So looking through this document right here, we have multiple different websites that we are using. We grab multiple stacks of data. So average, mode, high, low, or range. So we like to look at players that have larger ranges when we do the biggest segment, experts against experts. And when we're looking at our segment for steady and safe, we like to look at these lower range guys, especially lower range guys that are within our, our 3-4 column, because those are the guys that you're going to be questioning. Okay, do I start a Luther Burden this week versus an Andre Yoshivash? If you have both of these two on your team, the experts seem a little higher on Yoshivash at some points. Their modes are a little higher. The average is a little higher, but the range for Luther Burden is right there in that pocket. While for Andre Yoshivash, it is a very different number. So that is what we are doing with these. So let's answer this question from Sergio real quick. He has Jonathan Taylor as his running back. There you go. That would make sense on this. So looking at this, it's a standard league. What are you thinking on this, John?
Well, I wasn't impressed with Swift in the last, especially last week, because he got me a negative 0.1 points. So that is definitely, Manungai's splitting carries with him and going to keep him, I think, lower. Warren is now going to be battling with Gainwell after Gainwell's surge the last couple weeks. Shakir, I don't really know. Bucky's coming back. I'd like to say he'd be a full go, but they might bring him in slower. But he was practicing last week ahead of time. They might have just been holding him out. Rodriguez is most likely the number one in Washington. I forget who they play this week. I would go between Warren and Bucky.
Yeah, lately, Gainwell is outscoring Warren. So I wouldn't touch Warren. Bucky is going to be eased into things. But over just the last 4 weeks, the Arizona Cardinals have given up 4 80-yard rushers in the last 4 weeks, including another rusher of 67 yards. They gave up 14 touchdowns during that time. The lead rusher is averaging 14 carries throughout that time, and that's just with the rushing game, let alone the passing game. He will be eased in, though, which is a concern of mine. I also want to look at Deebo Samuel, because Deebo Samuel was a top, what was it? He was wide receiver 9 last week. However, they do play Denver, and Denver shuts down wide receivers like nobody's business. One other player I want to look at is Khalil Shakir, because Shakir has been stepping it up lately. So Shakir's had some up and down games. He had a big game week 8. And then last week he had 110 yards. But besides that, in between that, his wide receiver rankings were 52, 39, and 152 because they had one reception for -3 yards. Swift is losing out to Manungai. Warren's losing out to Gainwell. Khalil Shakir's not consistent enough. Deebo Samuel's up against this one of the toughest wide receiver teams ever. And then Chris Rodriguez is not somebody that I would trust over Bucky, even though Bucky's going to be eased in. That's what I would do right here. So I'm with you, Bucky. Okay, let's get into the two meatiest parts of our show. The first one is steady and safe. This is the part of the show where we each highlight 3 players in our positions of expertise that the consensus agrees on. So I will start us off right here. And the wide receiver that I want to talk about that the experts agree on is Khalil Shakir at wide receiver 22. Yes, did I just bring up that he's inconsistent as all get out? Absolutely. But the experts love seeing him right here with a range of 3. They are playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, as I want to make sure I'm saying that correctly. Yes, they are playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. And when Pittsburgh has played the wide receiver this year, they give up the second most fantasy points to the wide receiver. I'm looking real quickly. They've given up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 100-yard games on this season. And along with that, 1, 2, 3, 4 games along with that above 80 yards. I think that Khalil Shakir could be the play this week with Dalton Kincaid out. Dawson Knox is not Dalton Kincaid. They've been having trouble with Keon Coleman. There's no other viable options. And Josh Allen has to throw to somebody. Khalil Shakir is that guy that's going to go through the leaky parts of that Pittsburgh secondary. He was wide receiver 24 last week. So this is a space that he can be in. He can also be much lower, but I think against an easier defense, I think that Khalil Shakir is not a bad call. Wide receiver 22 with a range of 3. Very small range. Experts are all in on it.
And like you said just now, is that is a play to use, but when you're comparing, Bucky's going to be who you prefer over Khalil Shakir in that instance. So we don't want to confuse anybody by he is inconsistent and we don't really know fully what we're going to get, but versus Bucky in that flex spot, you're going to want to go Bucky and then Khalil. I'll go next in that my first one isn't a real big deep pull, but I'm going to go with Bijan just because of his range of only being 3 and what he's done and what you got coming up. He's got a tough schedule coming into the playoffs, but he's been steady enough. You're going to go up against Tampa Bay, Arizona, and the Rams for the fantasy playoffs, that is. So they've turned the offense over to Cousins now with Penix being out. So that's going to, they might key in more on that running game, knowing Cousins and his arm as he gets older. But Bijan is averaging 77 yards per game. He's had 4 touchdowns, 70 yards, 2 receptions last week against New Orleans. So that's who I chose to go with for that first one, just based on his range and where we were at.
There we go. Before I go to my next one, Jamie wants to know if Flores got run over by a turkey. That's probably the most feasible scenario. Absolutely, Jamie. Next wide receiver that is steady and safe in the experts' eyes and in mine kind of is Jaden Higgins of the Houston Texans. These rookie receivers tend to have bigger outbreaks as the season goes along in that second half of the season. Over the past 5 weeks, this is Jaden Higgins' rankings in half-point PPR. He has been wide receiver 22, 92, 24, 33, 22. So he has been a wide receiver 2 in 3 out of 5 weeks, and then a wide receiver 3 in another week. That's pretty legit, especially for somebody that's ranked as a wide receiver 44. I'm giving that to him. If he's a safe play, he very much is. I think you should go for it. I like where the experts are on this. Your turn, buddy.
Sorry, I had a computer glitch going on here. All my screens were going a little wild. I agree with Higgins. Last week, I think was a big game for him, and definitely on the waiver wire, everyone was putting him toward the top of their list. I don't know what his share was before that, but he's come on definitely now, and I look forward to him playing a bigger role here, whether or when CJ Stroud comes back. But I think Davis Mills has proven that he's capable of involving everybody in the game as well.
Okay. There we go. My next
I'm sorry,
one.
I got talking about yours and
Okay.
totally got
So go ahead and
off
talk
track.
about yours.
Brees Hall, sorry about that. Brees Hall was my second choice, and I chose him based on he's only got a range of 5. He's running back 15 this week. He is averaging 69 points per game, yards per game, sorry, and he's got a projection of 12.4 fantasy points. He had 44 yards last week that against the Ravens. That Jets offense is who knows what they're gonna do with the rest of the season, but he's still Brees Hall is going to be their one thing that shining light that they got for the rest of the season until they let him go.
Yeah. That's very true. Last one I'm going to talk about here, last wide receiver that's set safe is Luther Burden III, wide receiver 46. He's got a range of 4 right now. They're playing the New York. Oh, sorry. That's Darnell Mooney. Why did it show me that? Okay, so they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Philadelphia Eagles tend to be very good against the wide receiver, but they kind of had a little bit of a weaker game last week against the Dallas Cowboys. The Eagles are right in the middle. They give up 70. They're the 17th best matchup at wide receiver. But ever since, let's see, let me word this correctly. They have only given up since week 7. They've only given up 2 games of more than 5 receptions. But a lot of these players, I'm looking at it since week 7, 128, 79, 48, 38, 45, 88, 146, 75. There's a lot of not too bad wide receiver usage and yardage, especially comparatively where they're getting like 2 or 3 receptions. The last 3 games, Luther Burden has gotten 3 receptions. And in the last 2 games, he's had 5 targets. So he kind of sits, when he plays well, he sits around the high 40s, low 30s range. So I think this is another safe call from our experts.
My last was, and I don't know, being my first time and whatnot, I don't know that I grabbed the right people to really talk about or promote. But my last choice was actually Rachaad White. And as we said, Bucky Irving coming back is going to pretty much put him on the bench or pretty close to it, with Sean Tucker proving that he needs to be that number 2 and coming through and all. I got Rachaad White at ranked running back 52. He's only got a range of 2 from where they've had him this whole time. I think if Bucky wasn't coming back, you would see Rachaad White more, but they've turned to Sean Tucker as that backup, and I don't think they're even going to give Rachaad White much, but he did show that he had 29 of 31 receptions when he was out there. So I'm not a football coach, but I would think that's where I would go with the ball, especially with the reception side. Who knows what Baker's going to do and when he's going to come back. I believe I heard he is still going to try and play with that shoulder.
Yeah, we'll see with that. It would be nice, but you never know. He was held out of practice today. So they're preparing Teddy Bridgewater to start this week.
We saw that didn't pan out too much in that second half.
No, but I mean, you never know what's going to happen. Baker Mayfield is a tough guy, so
you don't want to come out.
No, not at all. Okay, before we go into our biggest portion of the show, let's talk about this question from Jonathan. Sutton or Wan'Dale Robinson, full PPR. Thank you for putting the scoring right there. Thank you for asking your question, Jonathan. I don't know if people realize this about Cortland Sutton, but he has since week 6 has only posted one game where he is wide receiver 30 or higher. And that was in week 7, where he was wide receiver 18. He has only scored one touchdown since week 5. And he's only had 3 games above 60 yards as in receiving. And in the last 3 weeks, he has had 2 games below 30 yards or below in receiving. Cortland Sutton just isn't cutting it, in my opinion. Wan'Dale Robinson had a freak week last week. And then the weeks before that, he was wide receiver 2 last week. Then the weeks before that, 48, 32, 32. So he has been getting some consistency, especially in the receiving game. He is always has high receptions. He was top 10 in receptions last year, top 10 in targets last year, even with Malik Neighbors on the field. Without him on the field, he's still gobbling things up. I think for this one, my answer is Wan'Dale easily. Your thoughts, John?
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely Wan'Dale. Regardless of Jameis or Dart coming back, he'll be the primary target for either one of them. And if Jameis stays in, he's going to air the ball down, and that's endless opportunities for Wan'Dale.
Yes, and I understand that Wan'Dale does play the New England Patriots, and Cortland Sutton does play the Washington Commanders, and those are 2 very different defenses to play. I just don't think that Cortland Sutton and Bo Nix are on the same page anymore.
And Troy Franklin's taken over that number 1 spot over Sutton. He's leaped over him for the number 1 spot. Which is
something I'll talk about in a little bit. Boom.
Okay.
And then our other question is Mark Andrews or Dalton Schultz. Mark Andrews, hands down. If you have not seen what the Cincinnati defense has done against the tight end position, let me talk to you about it. Because if I was a religious man that went up on the sermon and I preached about something, this is what I would be preaching about Sunday mornings for everyone to hear. Okay, so let's talk about their defense over the last few weeks, just to not long win this. Hunter Henry, 7 receptions, 150 yards, 15 yards, 1 touchdown. The week before, Darnell Washington, 4 receptions for 67 yards. Mind you, that's a low one. The week before, Colson Loveland, 118 yards, 6 receptions, 2 touchdowns. The week before, Mason Taylor, 5 receptions, 34 yards, and a touchdown. Then they have given up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 touchdowns to the tight end position this year alone. In the NFL. Most in the NFL. And lately, they are getting trounced by 100-yard games. They've given up 3 100-yard games this season to Pat Freiermuth, Colson Loveland, and Hunter Henry, all that have happened since week 7. And they've given up a tight end touchdown every week besides week 11 since week 3. I lied. They didn't give one up in week 4. I apologize. So since week 3 to week 12, they've given up at least 1 touchdown in the majority of those games. Often multiple. I think Dalton Schultz could be a good option. He was kind of ousted last week. But at the same time, I think that with this,
he's been very inconsistent. Has no consistency.
Yeah. Yes, he does not. And they play Indianapolis.
You can't go against Andrews against Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's literally like I am making any prop bets that I can for a tight end to score against Cincinnati every week. And I'm getting money from it every single week over the past 5 weeks. Boom. Let's have somebody score a touchdown. Boom. It's going to work out. Thank you for asking, Jonathan. Happy Turkey Day to you as well. Let's go to the meatiest part of our show, which is experts against experts. This is the part of the show where we each highlight 5 players in our positions of expertise that the consensus disagrees upon. We will each talk about one from each tier. For example, wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to start us off this week with Jalen Waddle at wide receiver 11 for my wide receiver 1 tier. He's got a range of 8, ranked 10 through 18. Overall in the season, he's wide receiver 16 with in fantasy points per game. Notice that I like to use fantasy points per game because sometimes these statistics can be outrageously different when you look at it throughout a small segment or throughout the whole season when you're not looking at per game. He is wide receiver 14 in fantasy points per game in the last 4 weeks that he has played. Currently, his overall season-long share is 23% target share, 43% air yards, 38% end zone target share. For air yards, just as a reminder, that is how far the ball is traveling. Every time the ball is thrown, air yards are taken up. So 43% of the time when the ball is traveling via the air, it is going towards Jalen Waddle. Since Tyreek Hill went down in week 5, his target share has shot up from 23 to 26. His air yards are 53%. Every time that the ball is in the air, over half the time, that yardage is going towards Jalen Waddle. And his end zone target share down to 33%, but going down to 33. Nothing to worry about, nothing to complain about. Also, since week 5, he has had 80 yards in those games. The Saints, who they're playing, are the 17th best against the wide receiver position. Only given up one game with more than 5 receptions this season. So that's pretty. They stifle it. They don't let guys become ball hogs in games. However, they've given up 13 touchdowns in 12 games, just like we were talking about with the Cincinnati Bengals against tight ends. This is how New Orleans is against a wide receiver. They have not given up a 100-yard game to a wide receiver yet this season, which kind of seems crazy, but they're right in the middle of the wide receivers, defenses against wide receivers. They've only allowed 7 wide receivers to get 70 or more yards in a season. Waddle, on the other hand, has had 7 out of his 11 games played this season with 5 or more receptions. So that, even though Saints hold people to 5 or less, Waddle's getting 5 or more receptions 75% of the time. He has 5 touchdowns on the year, meaning that he's a go-to target in the end zone. Saints are giving up more than 1 touchdown a game to the wide receiver position. Something that you need to know, though, is that he was limited at practice today. He came out of the bye week with an injured foot. Just keep an eye on it. It doesn't look like he'll be out, but he is being limited right now.
My number 1 tier running back would be Travion Henderson, which I told you a little bit earlier we would be talking about. And he is in a range of 7 he's running back 18 on the week. He is range of 7 between 9 and 16. Which I don't understand this stat, and I didn't look at too far in, but it says he's averaging 11.5 fantasy points per game. He's got 558 yards so far this season. He is got 46.5 yards per game, 4.7 per carry. He's got a total of 5 touchdowns, 1 fumble, 33 receiving targets, 29 receptions of those 33 for 180 yards. He's averaging 15 yards per reception. Now we know Ramondre Stevenson is slated to come back, and we saw a few weeks back when Ramondre was in and Travion, they went to Ramondre, and then Ramondre went out, and then they were shown why they need to leave Travion in as the number one. Then last 3 weeks, there's been 91.7 yards and at least one touchdown and 20.8 fantasy points per game. And they're going against the Giants this week, who has the second easiest defense, allowing 178 rushing yards per game. I believe, I forget what I looked at earlier as to what last week's total was. Was that when Jonathan Taylor ran all over them? I forget now. So. But so he's ready to feast on Thanksgiving, I think is the best way to put that. And hopefully Vrabel has seen the light and can leave him in and let him go.
Yeah,
let him eat.
Exactly. And Stevenson last week couldn't break through and get to the end zone from the 1 yard line. It happened multiple times. Stevenson he's not it. He starts off every season hot, and then about 4 to 5 weeks into the season, he burns out, and Travion Henderson needs to continue to be the leader of this backfield. They just have to allow him to. Okay. Wide receiver 2 guy is Michael Wilson. Things that would have sent August of 2025 me into a coma. Michael Wilson as a wide receiver 2 tier, ranked as wide receiver 14. He's got a range of 11. His highest ranking is 8, lowest is 19. Throughout the season, he's wide receiver 51 in fantasy points per game. However, he's wide receiver 12 in fantasy points per game in the last 4 weeks that he has played. Throughout the season, 10% target share, 15% air yard share, 24% end zone target share. The last 2 weeks, however, I know that's a small sample size, but that's when he's taken over. He's at a 32% target share, 54% air yard share, 25% end zone target share. Reminder that Jacoby Brissett just 2 weeks ago set an NFL record for the amount of completions in a game with 47. They are connecting like none other. It's incredible to watch. Michael Wilson has the 8th highest target share and the 5th highest air yards in the NFL over the past 2 weeks. He is also the league leader in targets and receptions and yards. So over the last 3 weeks, he has outproduced everyone at the wide receiver position by a crazy amount. His 33 targets is 8 more than the second highest wide receiver. 25 receptions is 7 highest than the second most wide receiver. He's got 303 receiving yards over the past 2 weeks, 13 more than George Pickens, who has in second most, 31 in front of Jackson Smith and Njigba. Those are the only 3 receivers with 200 plus receiving yards over the past 2 weeks. So not only that is he eclipsing everyone besides Pickens and JSN, he's eclipsing everyone else in the league by over 120 receiving yards over the past 2 weeks. It's a thing of beauty. It's one of those things that people are going to get too excited about in Arizona and put a tramp stamp of these 2 weeks on their back and being like, I'm commemorating Michael Wilson being the best wide receiver in the league for 2 weeks. And then they're going to wake up in like 5 years and be like, why is this guy on my back? The Bucks are the 12th worst against wide receivers. So they are really good for wide receivers to play. Top 12 defense for wide receivers to play. They've given up 75 yards to a wide receiver in the last 8 out of 9 weeks. They've given up 90 plus yards to a wide receiver in each of their past 3 weeks, which has all happened after their bye week. They've given up 5 touchdowns in the past 3 weeks to the wide receiver position alone. We're expecting Jacoby Brissett. He's still there. Kyler Murray's on IR. We do, however, expect Marvin Harrison Jr. to return as he returned to practice today. And hopefully he will be back in the game for his sake and hopefully for the Cardinals' sake. But that does not mean that they're going to go away from Michael Wilson. They've unlocked something there that they are hoping that Marvin Harrison Jr. would be. This is what they've been looking for. They found it, and I don't think you go away from it. This has made the Cardinals team something completely new, even though their star named wide receiver is coming back. Michael Wilson in the past 2 weeks has had the same amount of 100-yard games that Marvin Harrison Jr. has had in his entire career in Arizona. I don't think you can quit him. I don't think you can, even if Harrison is back.
No, even with Harrison back, with what Wilson's done, and that's just opened up the possibilities for both of them to basically eat and potentially be 100-yard receiver both, because Jacoby's already shown he's going to throw the ball. He threw it 40, I believe it was 43 times last week. So he's gonna sling it. You got McBride in there, who's obviously going to take a lot of those receptions also, but that just sweetens the pot for Brissett and the Arizona offense to
exactly
just go. And Stafford last week showed that Tampa Bay's vulnerable in all aspects of the receiving game. So defending the receptions anyways. So I'm going to go with my tier 2 running back going with this week is Josh Jacobs. He's on the list as running back 16, a range of 11 between 9 and 20. He is running back 7 in fantasy points per game. He has so far 648 yards, averaging 64 yards per game based on him being out last week. And then 3.8 yards per carry. He has 11 touchdowns and 2 fumbles, 37 receiving targets, 28 receptions. He has 237 yards receiving on the season, 23.7 yards per game. Week 13 against Detroit on Thanksgiving, they allow 103 rushing yards, so they've kept it. They're up there in the top 10, I believe it was, in their rushing defense. Emmanuel Wilson did fill in for Jacobs last week during his injury, so Green Bay got to see what he's going to do or what he's capable of doing without Jacobs. Now Jacobs back, he's I think going to take 65-70% of the workload at least. He could hold the fort down while he was gone. Green Bay needs their running game, I think, to open up the passing lanes for Love, because Love has struggled. I think Love's struggled right down there with Bryce on what yards per game and what he's throwing. He's only averaging 10 fantasy points per game in the last 3 weeks, and that's because he hasn't been slinging the ball. But they can get most of their offense from that running game. They have the 8th easiest pass defense. Detroit does. So I think Jacobs opening up the running game will open up the passing game and give Green Bay a chance to get things rolling again and into the playoffs.
As a Packers fan, I totally agree that everything should work out next week and there should be no problems on Thursday. Reality me, though, goes, I just need Christian Watson to pull off a Wan'Dale Robinson from last week. 9 receptions, 156 yards, and a tutty. I will take that any day of the week. Let me answer this. Jelly of the month, I'll be right with you. Jamie asked, would you be worried about Jacobs' re-injury or aggravating something? I am not necessarily worried about that. I think if they were worried about, I think I would have been worried last week about it, because he was a game time decision last week and they were worried about that and they wanted to watch for that. He's already been announced as being played. Underdog gave me that alert while I was doing research today. Boom. Loved it, because I have way too much Josh Jacobs in fantasy football. But I'm not concerned about that. Are you?
No, I agree. I had it in my notes also that they kept him out last week, just like Burrow per se. They kept him out last week just because they knew these early games were coming on this week and they wanted to rest and make sure they were ready for this week.
I think that's a good call with the early games as well. Didn't even consider that. If you look, Detroit's the third hardest team to rush against, but since they're bye week in week 8, if you combine the running back stats from the teams they've played, 3 out of the 4 teams would have had over 100 rushing yards. They did have 100 or more rushing yards. And when you have somebody like Josh Jacobs as the clear stalwart, you could see something like that for Josh Jacobs this upcoming week. There's some holes opening up in that. Okay, Jelly of the month 231. Thank you for your patience. Just wanted to get to that question since it's pertaining to what John was talking about. Darnell Mooney or Juwan Jennings PPR. For me, this is easily Juwan Jennings. He has been very consistent as of late in half-point PPR over the past 4 weeks. He's been wide receiver 24, 19, 35, 19. You know, that's a consistent wide receiver too, as you're going to get, you just know you can slot him in and he'll be, he could break out as well. But Darnell Mooney has only had 2 games this season where in half-point PPR scoring, he has been wide receiver 40 or higher. Yes, last week he scored his first touchdown of the season and had his season highest yards with 73 yards. But that was only on 3 receptions and 3 targets. The 3 targets right there is his third lowest target share on the season. And that was with Drake London out. I don't see that changing against the Jets. I don't see Darnell Mooney coming away with the luck and the opportunity of a 74-yard game and a touchdown. I don't see that. Your thoughts?
I don't think his receptions are going to go up anymore. And it's just like you said, the stats that were last week were based on the longer plays, and that's what's giving him the numbers that's showing up in the stats. Whereas Jennings, with Purdy back, now like you were early with the Green Bay fan, I'm a 49ers fan, so I do want Jennings to eat some more. I would really like Pearsall to wake up if anybody
right?
has the ability to wake him up. But Jennings and Kittle right now are 2 of his primary focuses. So I expect Jennings to get the ball, and he's going to have to get the ball out quick this week because Garrett's going to be trying to get that sack lead.
Yes.
Season sack lead.
Absolutely. So, Jelly of the month, we're both thinking Juwan Jennings right here. Thank you for your question. Wide receiver 3 tier, and we're getting a little low in time, so just make sure that we're running through these a little quicker. John, I know I'm going to work on that myself because I know that I am a talker. Wide receiver 3 tier, Troy Franklin of the Denver Broncos, wide receiver 27. He's got a range of 19, which is kind of crazy. Wide receiver ranked from wide receiver 21 to 40. He's wide receiver 33 in fantasy points per game on the season. But over the past 4 weeks, he's wide receiver 14 in fantasy points per game. Overall in the season, he has a 10% target share, 15% air yard share, 24% end zone target share. Over the last 4 weeks, went from 10% target share to 28% target share. Air yard share went from 15% on the whole season. Over the last 4 weeks, 50% air yard share. And then his end zone target share is at 63%. 63%. That is bonkers. That is insane. Troy Franklin is definitely the wide receiver 1 right now in Denver. He has the 14th best target share, the 6th best air yard percentage, and the 6th best end zone target share percentages in the league for wide receivers. So in these statistics, he is top 15, and in 2 of them, he's top 6. Air yards and end zone percentage, the target share, those are statistics that can help define who these guys are. Not just looking at, okay, Darnell Mooney had 73 yards last week, But what was his air yards percentage? Is he targeted in the end zone, or was that just he caught the ball at the 40-yard line, made some yak, and wasn't even targeted in the end zone? Those are things you do have to consider. The Commanders, who they're playing, are the third best wide receiver matchup in the league. They've given up 5 80-yard plus wide receiver games in the past 5 weeks, including 3 110 plus yard games. Over the past 5 weeks, 3 wide receivers have eclipsed 110 yards against them. They've given up 7 touchdowns in the last 5 weeks. Field stretching wide receivers are having a lot of success against the secondary, which is absolutely perfect for Bo Nix's college teammate and his now number 1 wide receiver in the NFL, Troy Franklin.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. Like we said earlier during our earlier talk, is Troy Franklin's become the number 1. So,
oh yeah,
my running back 3 tier is Kareem Hunt. Who'd have thought we'd said that? He's running back 24 fantasy points per game on the season. He is in the range of 27, actually, between 21 and 48. And 457 yards, 41 yards per game, averaging 3.9 per carry, 7 touchdowns, 2 fumbles, 15 targets, 13 receptions, 92 yards. He's got 8.4 yards per game, averaging 7.8 yards per reception. Dallas has been giving up the 125 yards per game. They did only allow 69 yards last week. Ever since the trade deadline, I think they did firm up a little bit of their defense, but I still think you can throw and run on them pretty much at will. Pacheco is coming off of the injury, coming back from the injury, so that could play a role in his between the 20s. But I think in the red zone, we've seen what Kansas City's going to do. They're going to give the ball to Kareem. They're not going to mess around with anything else. I heard Noah Gray is out, so I think it's going to be a Kareem and Travis kind of game against Dallas.
Yeah, absolutely. Noah Gray being out does not help. I'm very interested to see what newly acquired Dameon Pierce is going to do. He feels like somebody that's going to come in and ruin the fantasy football playoffs for some people. Just like that team that slips in as the 6th seed picks him up in their fantasy playoffs and just he trounces and he's a fantasy football champion. Because that could be a possibility. I like Kareem Hunt. I like what he's been doing with the Chiefs, but he's not explosive. And I think the Chiefs want that. And Dameon Pierce has proven to do that sometimes. Before we go into our next, Greg Carson asking us, thank you, buddy, for asking this. Colby Parkinson, Kyle Pitts, or Colston Loveland this week? That is a great question. Colby Parkinson has had 3 weeks with touchdowns, which is pretty impressive. However, he's only got 41, 14, and 41 yards in those games. That's not exactly what you want if he's not going to be scoring for you. He's had 5, 2, and 4 targets in those games. They do play Carolina, and the Carolina Panthers are the 9th best matchup for tight ends. I am looking through here, though. There are a lot of, just based off of a quick look, there are a lot of 20 and 30 yard games given up to the tight end. So nothing special. I'm looking at Kyle Pitts, on the other hand, has been putting up worse numbers than Colby Parkinson without the touchdowns. He's only had 2 receptions in each of his last 3 games. There's that offense has fallen apart. Colston Loveland, the Bears are playing Philadelphia, which is really tough. Second hardest team to play against for a tight end. Colby Parkinson, probably. That's my thought. What do you think,
I agree.
John?
I was going Colby when I first read that versus Pitts. Pitts started off hot, which I don't think anybody planned on when they were drafting this year. So you might have got a steal for the first few weeks, but he's went back to his normal Pitts. But
Yep.
Colby is showing of late, and the Rams offense, I think, is just throwing the ball everywhere, and everyone's catching it, and everyone's scoring. So between Puka and Colby and Devontae, Devontae's stealing all those 2-yard catches, catch for touchdowns. But Colby's still getting in there as well. Loveland was, when I saw Loveland, I was like, ooh, maybe. But I got to stick with Colby.
I'm with you. Jelly of the Month has one more question for us. Tight end is Hunter Henry versus the Giants. Should I switch to Otten, Strange, or Loveland on the wire? I would say pick up Loveland. You probably don't want to play him this week, but I would pick up Loveland because he plays the Green Bay Packers over the next 2 out of 3 weeks after that. I don't think Green Bay is 14th hardest matchup for tight ends, but I'm also looking at that, and I would trust Colson Loveland against the Packers, being a Packers fan. But I wouldn't do that this week. Strange might be a good one to pick up as well, because now that he's back in the offense, last week he had 93 yards, and he's an integral part of that offense. So I would go Strange. It looks like his tight end matchups are better than Loveland's as well throughout the season.
Yeah, Strange. I was going to initially, once I heard Strange and I knew Strange was back, I tried getting him last week on the waivers. Unfortunately, I didn't. But I do see that he's got Indy, the Jets, and Denver coming up. I'd say Denver's probably the hardest of those three, but
yeah, but I wouldn't. Denver and the Packers are actually ranked back to back in how many fantasy points they're giving up. So it's not that scary for either team. Okay.
I like Strange, Loveland, and Otten.
Yes. I like Strange. Strange is my favorite. I think you keep Hunter Henry because he could continue to be great, but he's definitely going to give you a false sense of hope after last week and what I talked about with the Cincinnati defense against the tight ends earlier in this show. Okay, we've got just a couple minutes left, so let's run through these quickly. Wide receiver 4 tier. Chimere DK, wide receiver 45. He's got a range of 9. Wide receiver 41 through 50. He's wide receiver 65 in fantasy points per game. However, over the past 4 weeks, wide receiver 29. The Jags that they're playing are the 13th best wide receiver matchup. So right a little above league average. They've given up 3 55-plus yards games in the past 6 weeks. Oh, no. Yeah, in the past 6 weeks. DK has had 2 games of 55 yards during that same amount of time. They've also given up some big chunk games to JSN, 162 yards, Nico Collins, 136 yards, and Michael Wilson, 118 yards. Wide receivers with 7 or more receptions against the Jaguars have exceeded 100 yards every time. They've also given up 6 touchdowns in the last 5 weeks. It might not be a great play because the Jags are pretty good with this, but he's a huge threat through the return game. He's actually in the running to beat the NFL record for overall scrimmage yards in an entire season because of how good he is at kicking, running, and now being essentially the number 1 wide receiver for Cam Ward.
Yep, I agree. And he's one of those for me that I play him, and that's his down week, and I set him on the bench. And like last week, he goes off.
Same.
I could have used
same
him.
thing.
But I agree with Eilick Ayumanor out now. That just boosts DK up even further. My running back 4 I picked is one of my favorites of this season coming back. That's Omarion Hampton. Hated to see him go down earlier in the year. He's listed as running back 44 fantasy points per game, and that's even being out the last few weeks. I think that'll climb if he stays healthy and can finish the rest of the way out. 314 yards, 62 yards per game. And I think that's where it'll show in the numbers. He'll climb up probably in the top 24 at minimum in the next 2 weeks. 21 targets receiving, 20 receptions, 27 yards per game in the receiving game, 136 yards total for the season. He's got a 95.2% catch rate. He's been out since week 5, and so I expect full steam ahead on that. Unknown if he returns as a bell cow this week. Vidal and him could share some carries, but I don't think Vidal's done anything to lower them wanting to ease Omarion in for whatever reason. I think if Omarion shows that he's a full go, then Vidal's just going to take a back seat. They are going against Las Vegas, who is giving up 103 yards per game as well. They've got the 15th easiest schedule. And so I just think they're going to be able to have their way this weekend.
Absolutely. I think as long as Hampton's playing, put him in.
Yep.
Tyler, love the content, man. This stuff is great. Okay, Dart or Burrow? Dart or Burrow? That is a question I have not considered. Let me look at their rankings and who they're playing real quick. So Joe Burrow is playing at Baltimore, and the Giants are playing at New England. Just based off of that alone, I'm gonna go Joe Burrow with that, because we don't know if Jackson Dart's gonna play. Joe Burrow's more than likely gonna play. Also, I like that defensive matchup better for Joe Burrow. What are your thoughts, Sean?
Who'd have thought that had been an option of which one of those, really? I mean, it's like you normally would see that, and it's like, who's asking that? It's Burrow all the way. But coming off of the injury, Baltimore's defense is tightening up over late, but Dart's health is still, you don't know if he's going to actually be a full go. And if Burrow's coming in to be ready, Burrow wants to fire it up.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Let's look at our last one right here real quickly. Wide receiver 5 tier. John Mechie III, wide receiver 50 ranking. He's got a range of 13, 42 to 55. On the season, he's wide receiver 113 in fantasy points per game. But in the last 2 games, he is wide receiver 9 in fantasy points per game. Those are his only 2 games with more than 70% snap share. His stats over that: 10 targets, 9 receptions, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not crazy impressive when you look at it, but he did have 7 targets for 6 receptions, 65 yards, and a touchdown against the Ravens. The Falcons are the 15th best matchup for wide receivers. They've given up 5 80-yard games in 5 weeks. 8 touchdowns in the last 5 weeks have gone to the wide receiver, given up 10 fantasy points to Malik Washington, Demario Davis, and Xavier Legette over the past 5 weeks, meaning that John Mechie could actually do something with this. He could actually give you a playable game this week. So if you need to fetch somebody off of waiver due to injury, because buys aren't a factor this week, John Mechie is the guy you need to go get.
Yep, I agree. I grabbed him. I picked him up in one of my leagues this week just to have him as a stash, and him coming on of late. So I agree. In terms of my 5, I'll do real quick. I have Dylan Sampson. Actually, we talked a little bit earlier today about Judkins is slated to play. He went out injured last game, came back in. He did end up with 2 touchdowns. But Dylan Sampson is someone I would at least stash. I don't know that I would start him yet, depending upon what your roster looks like. If you have to, then so be it. Shador did show that he's looking his way. So if he's out there, he's gonna be just throwing it to get out of trouble. He's still got a learning curve to go. And they are going against San Francisco, and it's going to be a cold game. So that could be a running game where they use Judkins and Dylan Sampson, and San Francisco's defense has showed we are vulnerable in a lot of holes.
Yes. There you go. Okay, John, thank you for filling in today. I've really appreciated it.
Thank you, Justin, Sean, Topher. Thank you for helping me out today, getting everything going. And I look forward to seeing everybody in the rest of this year sometime, and definitely next year.
Absolutely. Okay. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out to us. Again, I'm Christopher Kurt, but you can call me Topher. Follow me at TopherK44 on Twitter or Blue Sky. John, do you have places where people can follow you?
You can follow me at JRO3829 at pretty much all your outlets. So, and everyone have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy football tomorrow and this weekend.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for listening, watching, participating in our podcast, however you are. Have a great week. Deuces.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week for more ways to win your league.